Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who are not qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And today we are continuing our quest to do what's best in everyone's greatest good, and that's make faction focuses for 10th edition 40k indexes. That eye roll gives me life. It's referential, John. It's called entertainment. Today, we are doing a faction that I deeply enjoy, and I have played quite a bit of. This was one of my go-to factions for 9th edition. I lovingly 3D printed and painted up almost an entire army, and wrote way too much of a short story based off of one 500-point game with a buddy. Good lord.
Yeah, you were like a 7-page short story off of a 500-point escalation game. It was something to behold.
I think it was more than 7. I think I was pushing 20, 25 in Google Docs. If y'all want to read that, I don't think it's very good. Let me know. I will give it to you. But I really love this faction. They hold a special place in my heart. And that means I am really excited to pitch the fluff to y'all. Because it is something else. And that's the Tau. The Tau Empire, which is a faction that I feel is memed a whole lot and kind of dunked on quite a bit. And some of that is fair, but I think some of it kind of misses a bit of the point. And I think that's worth getting into, because when we can, we like to inject a little bit of nuance into these lore bits. Because I feel like, especially if you're someone who's watching a show like ours, you're probably not hyper indoctrinated into the deep lore. Probably just a usual casual gamer. And maybe all you've heard is memes. And I don't think they're the best way to learn lore, despite what John might insist.
Hey, listen, I think memes are a great entry point for you to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have to dig that hole.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably heard things of communist fish people or similar such things, or Gundam in Warhammer, and the reason people say that is because it's sort of partially true. The Tau are an empire, specifically the Tau Empire, set in the eastern fringes of the galaxy, and they are very, very, very infinitesimally small compared to something like the Imperium, which is colossal in scale.
Yeah, they are 1/1000th of the scale. They are not a massive rival force.
No, they are itty bitty, and could be wiped off the map at any moment if some faction really decided they wanted them gone. But the Tau have the benefit of suspiciously good luck. So in the fluff, way back in 10,000 years ago, the Imperium flew by a little planet and noticed that there were some sort of Stone Age trying to push towards Bronze Age natives living on a planet while it was doing an exploration. But it really wasn't worth saying anything, so they just made a little note down that, hey, there's a species here, and then moved on. They came back not too far after, I think a couple...
200-300 years, it wasn't even that long.
And I don't think it was 200-300, but it was very, very short. And when they came back, those species were working on advanced plasma weaponry. And their development was shockingly fast. And that gets into really how the Tau do so much. As you can see, they've got, from the pictures, I mean, they're very sci-fi-y in a normally sort of gothic horror game. And they've got things like powered suits and plasma and mechs.
They're a tone change for sure, but it's very contrasting. Mm-hmm. It's very good for the setting because it isn't just all gothic dudes and power armor and power knights. These are sci-fi guys. If you like other science fiction, you'll probably be drawn to these guys in some way.
Yeah. And really the way that they got so advanced was through their culture that strives for the greater good. That is their driving motto for everything. Is everything they do is for the greater good.
It's weaponized collectivism. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And at first it seems almost rainbow bright and entirely benevolent. God, words. Because they do approach other factions differently than things like the Imperium. If they come across another species, they lead with diplomacy. If they come across other humans, even if they do worship the God Emperor, they don't come at them with guns. They come at them with trade propositions. And then medicine. And then infrastructure. And maybe over time, we become, cooperative friends. And then maybe eventually you decide to join the Town Empire. And we give you a wonderful quality of life. You just work for the greater good. And through this way, they are slowly expanding their empire, trying to more and more expand with diplomacy as much as possible, and then with overwhelming combined arms mobile warfare when that's not possible.
Yes.
And that probably sounds awfully altruistic for a Warhammer setting. And if you look at it that way, it could be. I would argue that the idea of this faction that is super altruistic but is doomed to fail forever or be wiped out to the last bit is very grimdark. But in the lore, it is maybe not all as it appears. The tower spread up into sort of like different little subgroups, and all of them are ruled by the Ethereal caste. A group of Tau that are special compared to the other Tau, who are smarter and more eloquent. And oddly, whatever they say, all lesser Tau do. They cannot question. They cannot disobey. They must obey.
Yes.
It is a mind control sort of situation. Not like the Tyranids where they are non-sentient, but way beyond a cult of personality. This caste declares what will be done, and everyone else does it unquestioningly until they are separated from them for a long time. And then maybe they see the error of their lies. That gets into a Farsight Enclave sort of deal another time.
This is a very deep faction. It's probably on our short list of, if you'd like to see it, we would absolutely talk about this for a long period of time, just lore. Because
I've got a lot of thoughts. Ton of thoughts. I really like the Tau, which is probably why this fluff section is too long, but I apologize. I think they're cool, and there's so much to say. But you are playing these little expeditionary forces of combined arms and different castes trying to work together in warfare to help one another overcome greater enemies than you might otherwise do. In a way that is more symbiotic than something like the Guard, which are really just like individual operators kind of doing a big battle plan. These are groups literally working together on the battlefield, mechanically speaking, which feeds into their faction rule.
Yeah, and that faction rule is for the greater good. And so the way this works is you pick one unit that you want to be the observer and one unit that you want to be the guided unit. The observer unit will paint a target for the guided unit to then get bonuses. And those bonuses are, improving ballistic skill, ignoring cover, right?
If you have marker light. Yeah.
If you have marker light, right? If you don't shoot that unit, you are actually worse. So you're really incentivized to pair up, pick your targets, and shoot them down. This is a little bit more complicated and finicky than a lot of army rules in the game, but has the ability to really impact this force, especially when you start getting into the actual data scrolls here, or data sheets that lets you manipulate this even more with whatever the unit is, depending on if some units are going to be better at being observers or being guided units. You're gonna have to sort through it. This is a deep faction with layering your buffs, but you can read all of it right here and just really read over it 2 or 3 times. I've read it over it 5 times, and I'm still just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's hard to get your head around, but once you it's very simple in practice though. If If John
Yeah.
and I are on a battlefield, John says, "Hey, there, big monster," and then points at it, and I go, "Ah, thanks, bud," and then aim at it.
Dope.
We're very casual. I get bonuses to shoot it because John helped me. But John can still shoot himself. He just doesn't get the +1 ballistic skill because he was too busy pointing at it. So you want to... What this really means is you want to have, some spotters and some observers for every unit to try to maximize your big damage. And that's not their only trick, though. Then they also have a detachment rule called Kalyun. And it's over there. It's not a very complicated one, but there is a catch. So in Tau Fluff, they follow battle doctrines of Mont Ka and Kalyun. One is the Mont Ka, like the deadly strike of overwhelming force. Kalyun is patient hunter, which means you kind of wait. You draw your enemy in, you get them close, and then once they've moved up, you ambush them. And this represents that quite a bit. So you get sustained hits 1 across the army. And if a unit is guided, so someone is spotting for them, they get sustained hits 2. That means for every 6 you roll, that's 2 extra hits. That's really good. That's incredible. That's spicy. That's mind-blowing. But
you don't see that very often in 10th edition. Most of the time it's like sustained hits 1 or sustained hits D3. Straight up sustained hits 2. Very good.
Especially on a shooting faction, because Tau are overwhelmingly a shooting faction like this, that's a lot of shots to potentially proc off. But the trick and the big caveat is that this only starts in turn 3. So you will not get this bonus round 1 or round 2. Your third turn, now it's on. Which you have to kind of think about when you're playing the Force. Do you necessarily want to go in whole hog, or do you want to wait until your buff comes up for some of your stuff? It's tricky. But I think it really makes some of their units pop off well. And I think that's what we have to talk about next, because this army, it's got because of their nature of diplomacy, there are a lot of units here that aren't even Tau, things like Kroot or Vestige.
Yes. I love the Kroot and lore. Little chicken man.
Cool. Yes, I love bird dudes. Because the Tau, they open arms, meet people, and have diplomacy, so they have alien auxiliaries, which have various units. But I think for us, we want to pick things that are representative of the Force, and that means core Tau units, right?
Yes.
I think it is just the thing that you think of when you close your eyes and think Tau. John, when you think of that, what unit comes to your mind?
So, since I've been playing, Breachers have only become interesting the last couple of editions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're my pick. They're right here. They were great in 8th edition, they were great in 9th edition, and they're great now.
Yeah, they're a core unit of your army.
Yeah, I think that they are probably some of the coolest things, right? In an army full of long-ranged missiles and ion rifles and rail rifles and all sorts of stuff, these dudes decided to make laser shotguns, and they hop into transports, drive up the field, pop out, and decide to shoot 9-foot-tall murder machines with laser shotguns.
Up close.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Everything about what I just said is awesome.
And they hit a truck. They are higher risk because they got to get close, but boy howdy, they are really shooting hard.
And I think with this army, they really play well because with the army, the detachment rule Kalyun, where you really want turn 3 is where you're really gonna pop off. These guys really excel by the first turn. You're probably gonna let your opponent get on objectives. Second turn, you're probably not gonna be able to push up too much, maybe on one flank. But on third turn, and if they can get up there, and there's someone's on an objective, you will absolutely obliterate them off that objective with this, the Pulse Blaster, maybe with a Cadre Fireblade in the unit, and the Breach and Clear ability is really what lets it pop off, which is whenever they shoot at something that's on an objective marker, they get to re-roll all their wound rolls. And considering that you bring 10 dudes with 10 blasters that all have 2 attacks each, and the Cadre Fireblade can buff that, they are going to be rolling a lot of shots. And that benefits sustained hits, because the more shots you shoot, the more likely sustained hits is to go off. Breacher teams are really good. Don't sleep on them. I personally would take them over the normal Fire Warriors.
Yeah, I think I would have 1 unit of Fire Warriors just to set on a backed objective, but I'm bringing 2 units of Breachers for sure. Because those dudes with the Cadre Fireblade are 30 shots. If you're waiting until turn 3, sustained hits 2. Rerolling wounds? Good Lord Almighty. That's spicy. Especially if
very spicy.
You put them up in a transport. Wow. But while I think that's quite good, I think there's a second unit in this force that is at the core of it in the fluff and has been historically, but especially this edition. You're going to see it all the time. And for me, that's the Cold Star Commander.
Yes.
So the Tau forces are often led by commanders who are people who rose up through the ranks of the warriors, and they were good enough to get themselves recruited into being able to pilot the mech suits. And the commander in Cold Star Battlesuit was someone who was so good at piloting the mech suits that they got an invite to pilot a prototype speed suit that is insanely fast and now leads from the front on the field of war.
Yeah. They got the Gundam G suit. It's fun.
Yeah, it's very much Gundam-like, for sure. And you could look at it over there. It is blue blazes fast, 12 inches without running, and it can run. And it's still T5, so tougher than you would think, with 6 wounds, and that's without drones, because you're gonna have drones. And this thing, like, you're gonna see a lot of guns over there. Do not let it overwhelm you. In Tau, there are, like, these battle suits all can be tricked out with a variety of guns that you pick. A whole lot of them. You can kit it out for whatever your battle needs. You no longer have to pay for points, we have found out. So just pick a combination of guns that you're into. And then you take this guy and you put him in a unit of battle suits, or sorry, crisis suits as they're called. And he normally would be slowed down by them, but he buffs their speed. So now his bodyguard unit gets faster for him being around. So now he's moving 12. They're moving 12. And additionally, he gives them assault, meaning you can run them.
Yeah, I think that they're a fast-moving knife directly into the neck of your opponent when you need it.
Yeah, I mean, at movement 12 and you could run them, I mean, that means they could be zipping 18 inches and then dumping all of their firepower into your face and then maybe moving out if you spend a stratagem. I mean, this guy is going to be very good for, you know, he's in a unit, you're hanging back, you're hiding behind buildings with your robots, and then, oh, turn 3's here? Okay. 18 inches up the board, a bajillion shots, sustained hits 2. Oh, look, you've cleared something. Wowie zowie. I think you're going to see a lot of them. A whole lot of them.
Absolutely.
And I think that kind of leads us into, we've been dropping a lot of like subtle hints, but for us, we like to leave some tips for people at the end of videos. If maybe you are interested in Tau, or at the least the lore and stuff, and maybe enough that you might try to play the army, we want to give you some practical play advice to ease that transition, especially for a force like Tau, which are sometimes unforgiving. I can assure you. John, what would be your piece of advice for a aspiring Tau player?
So my piece of advice is that you have rules that benefit you later in the game. And so you really need to build a list and plan around what you're going to do the first couple turns. And what that means is you need to pick some units that can do really long range support to kind of poke at your opponent, kind of take out some stuff, maybe pull them off of objectives, that kind of thing. And you really want to have things that can scout forward and harass your opponent in the early turns without just getting torn to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you're going to want to be able to do something those first couple turns, but it's not where the core of your army's ability is going to be in. This is a very patient army. This is not like World Eaters where you run forward like with a bunch of monster trucks and whack stuff.
I wish.
The end of the game is where you're going to do well. And especially if you're newer, that's going to be very hard to do at first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a twofer tip here. The second tip being, like, really play out the game. Especially with Tau. Play it out entirely to turn 5 so you can see what you're capable of. Especially during your practice games. Like, play the whole game.
Because particularly, you might come back and steal the game on objectives late game.
Yes.
It happened all the time for me. I was shocked. This is an army where you got to play the objectives, and you can do so late. And I think that, for me, is my tip for Tau. Is, like, one, as I mentioned before, have a plan for how you're going to kit out your units when they have, like, a bunch of, replaceable weapons that you could hot swap as you see fit. And then use those sort of custom-built units to play the objective. There are some editions where Tau have been able to just, like, outright table everyone in front of them. I don't think this is going to be one of them. I think you are going to have to play the objectives and use your specialized scalpel threats to address particular problems stopping you from getting points. And that's really where the skill of a Tau player comes from, is seeing what you can obliterate to get on a point and then keep it for a little bit, long enough to win. And if you can do that, you'll do well. And this is a complicated force. So if you're towards the end of the video and you're confused by, like, spotters and observers, or you've got questions about the bajillion weapon options, or anything else, please feel free to put them in the comments down below. We are more than happy to help or answer questions, or talk way too long about Tau lore, or write obnoxiously long short stories about tiny battles. All of that is what we're here for, is to help y'all out. And if Tau's not for you, and, you're just not really into Gundam iron-blooded orphans, shame.
Shame.
Then maybe check the channel. We are doing all of the factions, so hopefully, if this faction doesn't do for you, there's something that will. And we'll be working on the rest of those, quite literally, right after this one. For now, that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide, Kentucky Fried. We'll see you on the next one.